Welcome, everybody, to the fourth installment of Positive Star Wars YouTubers, where we chat with said positive influences in the community. And today we're going to be talking to Matt from Blue Bantha Milk Co. Thank you so much for chatting with us, Matt.
Hey man, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Really exciting to have you on here. You're one of the channels that I most recently discovered thanks to PSWYT. So I just want to say you do really great content.
Thank you. I try. It's new, right? Like this is all kind of new to me. Like only 6 months, I think we've been running, and I mean, you'd know this better than probably anyone. You kind of have to get into a bit of a stride with things, and so I kind of don't feel like it's really. I kind of don't feel like I've really found the voice of the channel until maybe like the last couple of months. So
Yeah,
thank
definitely.
you. I appreciate it, man. Like, yeah, it's always nerve wracking putting stuff out there, isn't it?
No, definitely. I completely understand. I mean, what something that a lot of people don't really know about my channel is I started it back in 2015, I think, or maybe 2016. Like it's been a while, and
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
not the most consistent uploader when it came from all that time to now. Really the most consistent I've ever been is doing this program that I'm doing right now, which is PSWYT.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the reasons I really wanted to do this, so that I can get into the groove of being more consistent.
yeah.
So yeah, again, really happy to have you on. Just real quick, kind of give a general. So you said that you started about 6 months ago, right?
Yeah. Geez, it was only last night that we went live with our website. And one of the things with the website is like, what the hell do you put on it? So for the time being, it's just literally links to each of the YouTube videos. And so I'm starting with the old ones and just kind of, you know, retroactively uploading them. And I think the first actual video was technically in June. I think it was
Mhm.
June 2018. So yeah, about 6 months ago.
Yeah, definitely. And you have a partner in crime in all this, correct?
Yeah, so as of only last month, so we announced that Sean, who had been a guest, so Sean Fallon, author, film critic, local, lives just not that far from me. He had been a guest on the show technically once, but we recorded a couple of hours worth of stuff, so we managed to split that up into a couple of different videos. And yeah, like him and I met just through Facebook. So I run a Melbourne-based Facebook fan group, and he just happened across it and happened to be a very active member in it, and so we had a couple of very active beers and got chatting, and yeah, we got along, and so now he's part of the channel, and I'm really really happy about that because everything's better with friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just your whole channel to me really oozes a lot of the positivity that I think Star Wars YouTube has currently been,
Thank you.
well, lacking. Just everything from your best moments in Star Wars, I really love that series, to just you giving your opinions and you guys giving your opinions on like the viewing order. I really like that video, by the way. It was really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was a lot of fun putting that together. Actually, that one and the other one in that series. So that's the Getting Started with Star Wars series.
Hmm.
And I kind of feel like it's a set of videos that it's kind of akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Like how do you find someone that's never seen Star Wars? I mean, that is a challenge unto itself. But then once you found them, well, what do you do with them? Um,
Hmm.
it's a bit of a daunting thing. So yeah, we've got this viewing order that we've put together, and um, like a bit of an intro to just what Star Wars is about generally, which is, as it turns out, a hell of a lot of different things. Um, and then yeah, trying to like construct that into something that's digestible to give to someone that is a complete noob to the whole thing, and not overwhelm them and not make them feel like they're being fanboy screamed at, like you must watch it in this order. And if you don't, then blah, blah, blah. No one cares, like if
Exactly.
they've never seen it. So trying to be
Exactly.
conscious of that's interesting.
And I think I hover around, that kinda concept a lot because I really like the idea of, how exactly are you gonna show Star Wars to someone who, like, maybe wouldn't know too much about Star Wars. And
Yeah.
I think about Star Wars in that retrospect a lot. Like, even from down to, like, my shelves, the shelves of my books, how I order them, I always think, "Oh, if someone is interested in Rogue One, I'm gonna put all the Rogue One related materials next to it, that way they can delve deeper into kind of those
Yeah.
characters." So I always think of Star Wars in that regard, like, okay, if I'm gonna sit down someone, how am I gonna show them Star Wars?
Yeah.
And for me, the viewing order, like I'm not elitist when it comes to the viewing order. I think anyone can experience Star Wars any which way they want, and it's completely valid the way they do. Um, for me, like if I was to sit down, like a little cousin of mine, because I have plenty of those, I would show them probably the original trilogy, and then from there I'd go chronological or order of all the films, and that includes watching the original trilogy twice. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I look at it, but, of course, I'm also not opposed to showing them, say, Star Wars Rebels. I think that's actually another really good entrance to the fandom.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I think like, the hurdle you've got with some of the animated stuff obviously is kind of age demographic,
Mhm.
particularly like it's a lot easier to find younger kids, early teens and stuff like that that maybe haven't seen any of it. So the appeal is a lot easier. Adults is where it gets difficult because I mean,
Absolutely.
I love the Clone Wars, I love Rebels, but the first few episodes of that, or in the case of the Clone Wars, like the first season of that's a bit of a
Mhm.
hard slog. Like some of it is, some of it's very, very kiddie, and I'm okay with that. But then when you look at that in contrast to some of the latest stuff, like by the end of the Clone Wars, that was some of the best Star Wars like that I think I've seen. I was floored by it. And
Absolutely. I love the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars is one of my favorite Star Wars anything of all time.
it's
So
amazing.
yeah, absolutely, and again, I'm so excited for the new season.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, this year's gonna be a big year.
Oh yeah, 2019 is extremely exciting, and we are gonna discuss Celebration later on. Um, but for
Oh,
now,
can't wait.
I know. But for now, let's kind of back to the idea of positivity. I created the show. I created the concept of positive Star Wars YouTubers, but really as a way to showcase actual positive Star Wars YouTubers. I didn't invent the idea of positivity in a community. So I want to ask you, what is your idea or what do you define as positivity in the Star Wars YouTube community?
Yeah, okay, interesting question. I think it's support. So I'd try not to give a hugely long-winded answer to then have to go into detail on that because I think you can distill it. And for me, it's support. And so that's the short answer. And the long answer is looking at the greater community and finding ways to be continually supportive of other people inside of it. That's how I would summarize it. It's an interesting kind of thing because like I'm old enough to remember, and by no means am I like in the oldest demographic of Star Wars fan. I was born in '82, so I'm still old enough to remember. It was not in by any stretch of the imagination cool to be into anything geeky, anything sci-fi, anything like that. Um, and though I was too young to be a big part of a lot of communities and stuff like that at the time, and look, I live in Melbourne, right, in Australia. And for Americans listening, let's give you a bit of perspective. So as of today, you've got a landmass that is literally the size of the continental United States. You have a population that is just over half the size of California by itself in that entire space. And that's now. That's 2019, not when I was a kid, right? So people are spread out. There's not a huge dense population like there is in the US. So you're kind of lucky if you can find yourself as part of a big community over here, and it's always been the case. So you throw on top of that that Star Wars and sci-fi and fantasy and all that stuff was not cool for a very long time, and now it is cool. It's cool everywhere in the world, and I think that's a great thing. But it just because something is universally popular and universally cool doesn't necessarily mean that you stop having to support the people that are fans inside of it. It just means that there's more people.
Definitely. I think that was very eloquently spoken, and I completely agree with you. Um,
Thanks.
con
It's 8 in the morning here, man. Like I'm
no,
I'm
I
awake, man.
completely get it.
This is
Um,
Barocca.
mhm. So, for me, positivity, I made this whole thing when in response to 2018, essentially.
Mm,
2018 was a big year for Star Wars, the YouTube community, because there was
rough year.
this yeah, there was this big shift. There was this big shift in attitude, um, and for me, the way I just always try to look at it is let everyone enjoy Star Wars the way they want to enjoy Star
Yeah,
Wars, kinda thing.
absolutely.
And if the way you're enjoying Star Wars is hurting other people and how they enjoy Star Wars, you know, uh, I don't support that. That's kind of
No,
the big
yeah,
the big takeaway that I get when it comes to positivity. Don't let everyone enjoy what they like,
yeah,
and that's kind of what it's been, and that's why I made all of this so I can support YouTubers who believe in that, and also just I'm not saying you have to love the Last Jedi, because you don't. You absolutely
no,
don't.
you
Just because
don't.
I enjoy the film doesn't mean I'm not going to share someone who you know is not a fan of it. But of course, there's always like how do they promote their feelings? Do they
Mm,
constantly, attack people who do like The Last Jedi? Then that's something I'm not gonna approve of, you know?
yeah, yeah. I'm the same as you. I think in that, like the way I like to kind of think about that whole scenario, right, is, and it goes both ways. Now,
It does.
I have an opinion on how far it goes in both ways, and some may find that controversial, some may not. I don't know, but so imagine walking out of anything that you really enjoyed, group of friends, group of people, and you're standing in a circle and you are all gushing. Whatever it is that you've been to, whatever it is that you've seen, you all were just totally floored by and you loved it. And you're standing around and you're telling each other how happy you are. I liken my experience, and I think a lot of people can probably liken their experience to The Last Jedi, particularly being in an online community, as that happening, and then someone walking into the middle of that circle of everyone being happy and telling them that they're all wrong. Like it's kind of a hard thing to deal with, because when you do that, you're not just saying that you didn't like the film. Like, if you come in and you just say, that was an objectively bad film, that was a horrible film, blah, 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 and you start ragging on it, yes, you're entitled to your opinion. But are you entitled to try and take people that liked it and enjoyed it and feel something great and maybe it spoke to them? Are you entitled to try and take that away from them? And I think that's where there's a dividing line. I don't care if someone didn't like The Last Jedi. It spoke to me very personally and very deeply. Um, but I would never, ever presume to try and impose that on someone else.
Exactly.
And that's where I think you've got to draw that line.
Mhm.
And that's where, like, it can go both ways. You know, it can be a group of people sitting around talking about how they all felt dismayed by the thing and how they all felt that Luke was, horribly hard done by and all these sorts of things. And if someone walks into the middle of that group and tells them all that they're objectively wrong and, that they just don't get Star Wars, well, I mean, it's condescending and rude as
It
well.
is. It is.
There's a better way to do it.
Definitely. And you put into words pretty much exactly what I was about to say, in the sense that I hear a lot of opinions about, going the opposite way of saying, "Oh, they just don't get Star Wars."
Yeah.
Well, I really dislike that mentality, because I think there are people that do look at Luke's actions and do look at the original trilogy, and they probably do see, what's happening there, but that doesn't mean they have to enjoy the execution, and it doesn't mean
No.
they have to enjoy that that's the route that the story went. And, that's okay. We can be
Yeah.
looking at the same thing and have different opinions. That's just life. That's just how everyone perceives reality, you know?
Subjective, right? Like,
Exactly.
art
Exactly.
is subjective. Doesn't matter what anyone says. A Rotten Tomatoes score, it doesn't mean anything. And the reason why it's not all 100% and all 0% is because it's subjective.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's something that I think is important. And that's one of the main things I want to push when it comes to this, to the idea of positivity, is that,
Mm,
just be aware of everyone's feelings and, their opinions, and if allow them, to enjoy what they love, just as you yourself would want the same actions done to you, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the idea, in terms of, I think we're in agreement in that regard when it comes to positivity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But like, can I throw a question back at you though?
Absolutely.
So, something that I've been thinking a lot about, and sorry if I'm like skipping ahead or anything like that, but like, how do you how do you then reconcile, I guess I think there's a shift when you go from being a strict consumer based fan, and so, just to define that, it's just someone that just watches the films, enjoys the films however they do or don't, to a creator based fan that is then actively putting themselves out there, creating content for others to consume. Like, do you find that once you go down that route, that you start kind of inadvertently questioning your own thoughts that you are broadcasting? Or do you think that there's an inherent kind of responsibility to say, okay, well, I understand that my views and thoughts and feelings aren't necessarily going to be the same. So how do I put out what I'm thinking and feeling without influencing, without trying to influence people? Because I think there's something in that. And I think as your community grows, I think that becomes more and more of a consideration that has to be had.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. My initial thought already is, aren't all YouTubers essentially influencers in some regard? We're
Mm,
all, putting out our ideas and putting out our thoughts. And it's always, it's a very human feeling to be able to see people say, "Oh, wow, I really agree with you," or, "Oh, wow, you really changed my mind on this subject." And I think it's okay for people to look at that and say, "Oh, hey, I was able to make a rational enough argument for someone to be able to say, 'Hey, that's an interesting thought. You really changed the way that I was thinking about the subject.'"
yeah.
Um, so for me, I feel like it's only human to be able to look at that and say, "Okay, it's okay for me to be this individual who is sharing their ideas, and to be able to
Mm,
get feedback from people." Of course, if people don't agree, that's fine as well. This is a platform where everyone is just sharing the ideas of how they feel and how they perceive reality. And, it's just really no different in a lot of the people, and it's just about how they go about doing it, you know? I always
Yeah.
try to promote to be as respectful as I can, and if people disagree, that's fine, just, try not to get personal about it. Um,
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
go on and say, "Wow, you're a disgusting Disney shill," it's like, I mean, what does that mean? I just enjoy something
Uh,
that you don't enjoy.
what does any of that crap mean? I mean, really, like, you throw the word shill at someone. Well, okay. Sorry, I'm going to sidestep a bit.
No, that's
Did you
fine.
see that quote of John Cleese? I think it was. I'm going to just paraphrase the quote because I can't remember it. It was about the term snowflake. Um, it was getting shared a bit, maybe like 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and his quote was something along the lines of that snowflake is just a term used by people who want to. Um, what was it? It was to depower empathy or something like that. Something along those lines. They want to basically shrink the concept of empathy. Um, so they use that term, and I think you can apply that kind of logic to a lot of these phrases and terms that get thrown around the Star Wars community. Like, you call someone a shill, and it's like, okay, well, all you're doing really is you're just trying to label and bottle something up in a way that can be really easily dismissed. Because if you can't do that and you must actually focus on what that person is saying and you must have some kind of in-depth discourse with them and kind of try to understand them, well, I think that says more about you as a person if you throw that term around. It says that you don't want to actually engage. You just want to throw your opinions out there and not be challenged on them. Um, yeah, I think it's a bit of cowardice when you use those kinds of phrases to try and diminish others.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge overgeneralization of yes, exactly, overgeneralization of exactly, of people that just enjoy something that others don't, and
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that we can't be critical. I'm very critical about some of Star Wars. I mean, just it really bums me out that we're not getting a lot of Star Wars games like we used to, and that
oh god,
more than
those
anything, some are getting canceled, you know?
that news. Oh man,
Yeah,
especially after, like, sorry, we could go on a whole tangent about video games, but, like,
yeah,
I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2
mhm,
almost almost to death, basically. And especially after playing something like that and having an experience like that where a single player narrative story could be so affecting, like, I came out of that going, God, I wish that a Star Wars game could do this. Like, I
exactly.
wish that I could have this kind of experience and sink this kind of time into a Star Wars game and feel something, not just run around a screen shooting people. And yeah, when that open world project got canned, I was just like, oh, come on. Come on.
Yeah, exactly, like, there are things to be critical about in relation to Star Wars, and I
Mm,
think it's totally valid for people to have said criticism.
yeah.
Again, it's how you go about reacting to it and presenting yourself online. Am I going to look at that and say, "Okay, well, I'm gonna boycott Disney until they make a better Star Wars game?" Or are you gonna voice your criticisms and say, "Well, maybe EA isn't the best, developer of video games for the Star Wars
Yeah.
license?"
Yeah.
There's different ways and to go about it. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the things that can be said, and let's just use the video games thing. Um,
mhm,
I think that you can really use that as kind of a great example of something that I think tends to be more universally accepted inside of the Star Wars fandom. I mean, when a good Star Wars game comes out, you don't see a lot of people screaming about how the game killed Star Wars, right? It kind of doesn't happen. I think it's
Mhm.
a special medium in that sense. I would love to see Lucasfilm recognize that, and I would love to see them kind of say, "Wow, we've got a real opportunity here beyond the games, beyond the books, where we can engage people in something and actually get people excited again." And yeah, I mean, I've got thoughts and feelings about how EA handle it, but I also recognize that there are in underneath that EA umbrella, there are many, many developing studios, like sub studios inside of it. And the people in those studios just want to do good work. Like that's what they want to do. They don't go to work every day going, "Oh, I want to pump out some crap." Like that's not, I'm not going to speak
Exactly.
for everyone. Maybe there are a couple that think that, but
It'd be very odd, but yes, definitely.
it would be very odd, right? So like these people want to do good things, and I'm sure they're disappointed as well. Um, I think you can voice being unhappy about that kind of thing in a far more eloquent way than screaming about Disney, canning and tanking the Star Wars brand by giving it to a studio like EA.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I feel like blame is also something that is directed in just all avenues in Star Wars. That's like, okay, really think about where you're putting the blame here. I've seen some
Mm.
people look at the everything that's going on with with EA and say, "Oh, this is all Kathleen Kennedy's fault." I guarantee you, Kathleen Kennedy was probably not happy given the news that they're gonna have to cancel a property or cancel a game
Yeah.
of one of her property. Essentially,
Yeah.
I don't think she was
Yeah.
happy about any of those decisions. But given a marketing and giving a business standpoint, it's probably
Yeah.
one that she had no choice but to do.
Yeah. And I mean, from what all the reports are looking like, it's an EA decision
Yeah,
anyway. I mean,
exactly,
once you make those decisions at that kind of level, like it travels up. It's like, what do you like?
exactly.
I can't imagine that anyone's going to be happy about that at Lucasfilm. Like, I just can't imagine that.
Yeah.
I think to imagine people sitting around cheering and clapping, which I honestly like, if you read some of the stuff that people write on Twitter and Reddit, like I think it's bonkers. Like, do you really think people are sitting around like cheering and clapping that, oh, you've thrown another nail in a supposed coffin? Like, come on, come
Exactly,
on.
as if, like, Kathleen Kennedy is throwing a party for another cancellation of a game,
Yeah,
that could have increased profits for her in her favor, and
yeah,
it's really interesting and kinda silly, just, almost the mental gymnastics that they, do in order to try to fit their narrative of how there is an agenda to destroy Star Wars, which there very
yeah,
clearly isn't.
yeah. I think there's something to be said for drawing a line between a problem and problematic.
Mhm,
It's something that I consider a lot, and you see the term problematic thrown around a lot online, and sometimes people don't use the particular word problematic,
mhm,
but they will infer it by what they say. And I see a difference between the two. So when something is a problem, it's something that you recognize. And I think that the onus is a little bit more on you, that you need to either fix or reconcile it. But when you think of something as problematic, whether you're consciously thinking that word or not, or whether you're using, a synonym or something, um, when you think of it that way, well, that's someone else. That's someone else's problem. That's someone else's fault. They've got to fix it. And I think that there's a lot of that going on in Star Wars at the moment, where people are, whether consciously or not, they are moving everything out into the realm of problematic. Everyone else must solve this problem. Everyone else must deal with the way that I'm feeling. Everyone else must provide a solution. And I don't think that's the case. I think there is a bit of self responsibility on that. Sometimes it is just a problem, and sometimes your opinion on something is something that you yourself need to work through. It's not anyone else's job or responsibility to do that.
exactly, and I think a lot like kind of segueing into this, a lot of influencers that have a lot of power within the Star Wars community really
Oh
need
yeah,
to think about the way that they, you know, say certain things
yeah.
to the community, because it's so easy to have a big time YouTuber divide the fan base um,
Oh
off of
yeah,
a narrative, and I'm sure you
yeah,
know exactly where I'm going with this. There was a
yeah.
certain YouTuber and, of course, Star Wars Theory in terms of the fan film. And look, when it comes to fan films and, the rights and all that, I'm no expert when it comes to that. So
Right.
I can't give you a professional opinion on, what happened. All I know is that there's some things that are not in fair use. Fan films are not in fair use.
Yeah,
But if they went and sat down with Lucasfilm and had a meeting about it, then everything should be fine, and everything did end up fine in the end of it.
absolutely.
So, when it comes to that, I think influencers just need to be aware that, it's extremely easy to get their fan base to be riled up and
Yeah,
essentially create more division. I mean, what are your
yeah.
thoughts on all that?
Well, there was the question that I posed back to you about, like response about, how you reconcile
Right,
bringing
right.
your own opinions to the internet
Yeah.
is kind of along that same train of thought. I think there is at a point, I think there is a tipping point of social responsibility, and people may disagree with me on that. I don't care. I think that when you have a very large follower base, I think you do tip the point of social responsibility. And I don't think that it's when you have 1.6 million followers. I think it's far earlier than that. um, and I think there is a little bit of responsibility to say, okay, well, now my voice is being heard by, you know, quite a big segment of the fan base. Quite a number of people are hearing what I have to say, and quite a lot of people are taking what I say at face value. So I think you have a responsibility at that point to make sure that what you say is kind of a little bit more objective and a little bit more reasoned, not just kind of flying off, um, and firing all over the place because you're upset about something. I think that, and I'll say it openly, and if I ever happened to meet him, I would say it to his face. I'm not afraid to say it. I think that Star Wars Theory really messed up in the way that he handled it, the way that he handled that copyright claim, and I've said on Twitter, publicly on Twitter, that when it comes to the copyright side of things, I don't think that you can complain, really. Like I didn't see his point about it taking something away from him because apparently he was never monetizing it. So I think there's that side of the argument, and that's all on technicalities. Um, I think that take that aside, so push that away. I think it's pretty clear from everything else that can be found out on the net, and with only a small amount of research, that Warner Chappell, I think, music
Mhm.
made the claim manually. So it's not like someone at Lucasfilm or even Disney was sitting there trolling the net looking for things that they can put claims on, but there's a good track record of Warner Chappell doing that. And so they did it. Forget the technicality of him using Imperial March. Like, so something has flagged them to the use of that content. They've gone in, they've put a manual claim against it. They didn't do anything to disable the video. They just monetized it. Didn't affect his channel in any way. It didn't affect his income in any way. Um, and so I think then reacting to that so quickly and in the way that he did, and then seeing that narrative evolve, was, I found it really interesting, but also I found it really kind of against the way that my take on social responsibility sits. He very quickly started throwing blame at Disney. And something that I notice with him, and why I don't view his channel anymore, despite it being one of the key influences for me wanting to create my own stuff, is because when something is wrong, it's Disney's fault. When something is wrong, it's either Disney or Kathleen Kennedy's fault. And when it's going in his favor, Lucasfilm saved the day. And watching that narrative unfold, I found kind of troubling a little bit,
Exactly.
even down to his, Lucasfilm saved the day picture. He's got George Lucas's face there. That should be Kathy
Kathleen Kennedy's,
Kenny.
exactly.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, at what point do you call BS on this kind of stuff and say, come on, enough's enough? Like, you need to rethink your strategy with the fan base, because I think you have a responsibility to be a little bit more objective and reasoned than that.
definitely, and I completely agree. When you had, posed the question and I had said that, I think it's okay to be sharing the opinions, and, like, my thoughts and things on, just everything. Uh, Again, of course, I'm coming from a person with under 1,000 subscribers, it's very, you know
131. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, it's hard to be able to say, "Let's put ourselves in those shoes." At the same time, though, it's pretty clear that if you're gonna be someone with that amount of influence, um, the opinions you give are fine, but you have to realize that everything you say is going to be really expanded upon by the fan base, and honestly, you're gonna have a lot of people that agree with you and
Yeah.
defend you, and when you have that kind of responsibility, it can really cause divisions, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I think that if you let's just talk about people that are very supportive of him.
Mhm,
And I want to make clear here, I think the fact that he made the film is fantastic. It's not my bag. Like, I'm not a big fan films kind of guy. Like, I've just never really been into them that much.
mhm.
But I watched it all, and the technical execution's amazing. Like, at,
Absolutely.
at a fan film level, like, holy crap. Like, part of the reason why I don't like fan films is because, like, there's something that I find um, detaches me and pulls me out of the experience when it kind of looks like someone's just grabbed their little handy cam and thrown a tape in it and just they're running around their backyard. There's something that pulls me out of that
Yeah,
that experience. But it was pretty hard to get pulled out of that experience with his fan film because it was so well done. So, like, great, like, like, huge congrats to him for doing that. And I think there's something to be said for, when you've labored on something so painstakingly, as he obviously has, anything that kind of comes in and maybe poses risk to it, you are going to take personally. I understand that. I would have liked to have seen someone, whether it's him or someone else, say to him, hey, just chill for a second. I understand this is your baby, but let's just take a measured response with this, because people love the fan film. People love what he produces. And I used to be one of those people that loved his channel. Like, you are going to get people that will defend it, sort of till the end of time, regardless of whether there is any technical merit behind the argument, because they support him. It's on relationship. It's not on the technicalities of what is and isn't appropriate under copyright claim. Like, relationship means a lot. And I think that's where we're kind of not recognizing that. I think if you get a bunch of his supporters and sit them down face to face and explain how the copyright system works, I don't think that many of them would argue against that. I think their argument would be more about Star Wars theory and about his effort and his agreement with Lucasfilm and all that sort of stuff. It's a separate conversation.
it is. It absolutely is, because I hear the comment a lot, whenever someone tries to explain copyright to them. There's the comment that I see repeated over and over, "But it's still not right." And so it's very clearly that whether or not it should happen or whether or not it has to happen isn't really on their mind. It's more of the fact that morally it's not right to them. So
Yeah. Yeah. And, you can go around in circles on this. I think, as you and I were saying the other day, like, you can, the mind gymnastics that you have to do is endless. It's like, but my effort using IP that wasn't mine, that they're claiming their IP on because they're owning it, which I got to borrow, which I got to, put my effort towards, but they're claiming it. Like, it just doesn't stop. So given that that cycle can't actually stop, it's all about him. It's about him, his fan base, people supporting him because he felt done by.
Right.
You know, you tend to form relationships with things with people that, even if they are just a face on a screen, you start to feel something for them. It's how movies work. So if you form that relationship with someone, you are going to defend them. It's just the nature of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think this has been a very interesting conversation in terms of positivity and just YouTubers in general, and some really key lessons that I think we can take on for
Yeah,
every Star Wars YouTuber. You know, has these questions and have these thoughts. Um, so I think this has been a very constructive conversation.
yeah.
So changing the gears a bit, we're going to move away from the idea of positivity in the channel. It's getting
Negativity.
negativity. No, no, we're gonna get away from that. And we're gonna talk about something fun. We're gonna talk about Star Wars Celebration. So let me ask: is it your first time?
First time.
Me
Yeah,
too, and
absolute first
I'm
time.
I'm extremely excited. What is
Same.
what is your wish list?
That I don't cry too hard while I'm there, that I don't piss myself, um, and that I meet some really cool people. Um, like, my focus is very much on community. I kind of have this understanding that there will be something about episode 9 there, and there's probably going to be a whole lot of updates and news and new things to get kind of screamy and gushy about. Like, there's a part of my brain that's just gone, that's happening no matter what. You are going to be a blubbering mess at some point. So that's like a quarter of my uh, capacity to think about it, and then the rest of it is just very community focused. Like, that's what I want to get out of it. Is I want to meet people. I want to put faces to all of the Twitter handles and stuff that I've spoken with over the last 6 months. Um, and I'm flying in by myself. I'm meeting my cousin there. He's only staying for 2 of the 5 days. I'm going to be in Chicago for like a week beforehand. So I'm really just kind of using this as an opportunity to just kind of throw myself into the deep end and just see what the hell happens. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, for me, well, for one, the living situation for me, I'm actually staying with a friend in a college.
Cool.
He has a dorm and he has invited me. Everything checks out, like with the RAs and stuff, that they can have visitors. So I'm gonna stay there, and I got the pass for all 5 days. I'm extremely, extremely excited for it.
Yeah.
And kind of echoing what you said, I'm excited to put, faces to the names that I've seen on Twitter, like, daily now.
Yeah.
There's just, the Twitter community has been really fun. Granted, of course, there's the debates and there's the hot button topics that happen far too often
Part
in
and
this
parcel
in
of it.
exactly. But still, I've loved being able to bounce ideas off of people on Twitter, and I think it's going to be a really fun time to be able to meet up with that community. It's going to be
Yeah.
very exciting. For the wish list thing that I asked, for me, I want something that no one has
Oh,
expected yet.
yeah. Yeah.
That's essentially it. I want to know what's after 9. What do we have to look forward to once 9 comes and ends? What's something that we're just not gonna expect? Or maybe obviously there's rumors and stuff, but I want
Yeah.
something that people are gonna look at and be like, "Whoa, that's the next big thing. That's what we're gonna be excited and hyped for and discuss till the
Yeah.
cows come home." Until then, and I'm not talking about something that's already been announced, like The Mandalorian or Cassian Andor. I'm sure we're gonna get something for those.
Yeah. We'll probably get some footage or whatever.
Yeah, but
Um,
what I'm more curious about is stuff that we just don't know yet, and I think that's the most
yeah,
exciting for me.
yeah. Well, there's like the Weiss and Benioff trilogy.
Yeah, exactly.
There's Ryan Johnson's trilogy, and yeah, part of me thinks that we'll hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get something to do with that, even if it's just a synopsis. Like God, if you know what Star Wars community is like. Like, I mean, you throw out just a synopsis for that with not even footage or maybe like a couple of concept drawings, that's gonna keep people going for 2 years, easy,
Yeah, no doubt.
easy.
I mean, we're the Star Wars community is very easily excited about the next big Star Wars thing, and we will analyze, we will dissect, we will
Yeah.
discuss, and we will, fan theory it till the cows come home, and it's gonna be amazing.
1,000 videos of, picking apart the one single concept drawing. It's like 52 Easter eggs you may have missed in the
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 one
TV
concept
Weiss
drawing.
announcement. It's like, see
Ex
that blue line there? Yeah, that's a lightsaber.
That's a
It's like,
lightsaber,
that's a
absolutely.
pencil.
Yeah, but that's part of the fun of fan communities, and I'm excited. I'm excited for
Yeah.
what's gonna be announced, and I'm excited for what it's gonna do for the fan community.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, like, you know, for everything that has happened over the last 12 months and the fact that we're still talking about The Last Jedi, it might be kind of nice to talk about something that is completely fresh and different and not part of the same mythology necessarily. Um, I think that it's something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has to its credit, and I'm not talking about people that were comic book fans that then got into the films or didn't get into the films because they're comic book fans. Those people that weren't comic readers that got to watch all of these films in a 10-year period. I think there's something to be said for big long storytelling that you don't have an expectation for, that you don't have any kind of predetermined set of ideas about. um, there's something very unifying in that. It's like everyone gets to experience it for the first time together.
Exactly. Oh boy, it's gonna be great. We're all gonna cry together, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, huddled masses.
Exactly.
Yeah,
S
tissues.
Yeah, exactly, but everyone bring tissues because 'cause we're all gonna need it. We're all gonna cry together. It's gonna
Yeah,
be amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
just get Kleenex to sponsor, like, just
exactly.
have those, like, when you go to, like, big music festivals and they have, like, sunscreen or sunblock stands, they've just gotta have tissue stands, people walking around with, like, pocket Kleenex packets and stuff. It's like, "We understand
We
here.
understand. We're here.
Try our new 3 ply."
We're all we're all a fan community. We'll all get emotional together.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's so much to be excited about when it comes to celebration, and I look forward to meeting you, of course, and meeting a bunch of
yeah,
other
likewise.
fellow creators in the Star Wars YouTube space. So that should be a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
likewise. It's gonna be fun. I hope you all drink beer because I do.
No, definitely. I'm slowly getting back into it. I had sworn off alcoholic beverages, but you know what? It's going to be celebration, and I want to have a fun time. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I think, like, so I just had a sorry, I'm going to talk about something personal. I just had a trip to the States a couple months ago, and it really hammers home just how good the beer culture is over there. I don't know what it's like in Chicago, but California, like, oh wow, it's
Mhm.
mind blowing. Like, I remember being 20 and 21 and going on holidays to the States, and it wasn't so good. Like, there
Yeah,
was not really
absolutely.
much craft beer and whatnot, but, like, something to be said when America says they're gonna do something, they kind of do it. Like, I went to 3 bars, and every bar had 50 beers, like, that I could choose from, and none of those 50 beers were repeated at the next bar, and that was just on my first night in California.
That's great.
I
You
threw
heard
up.
it you heard it here first, folks. We're gonna be drunk and crying in Star Wars Celebration, and it's gonna be amazing.
Hopefully not too hungover.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
We can
but
only hope. That's what
I
Star
would
Wars is
admit,
about, hope.
I don't think
Alright.
that's the kind of hope that we're thinking about.
Probably not, but all right, Matt. Well, we have been going at it for over 40 minutes, so I want to say thank you so
Yeah.
much for sitting down and chatting with me. Is there
Thank
anything
you.
you want to promote?
Just go to the channel. That's it. Just find Blue Bantha Milk Co on YouTube and check us out. We are new, and we've spent probably, of the 6 and a bit months that we've been around, um, it's really taken kind of, I'd say, at least 4 of those months to really figure out what the hell we're doing. And as a result, we didn't really go hard at trying to get viewers and audience and stuff. We put it on Twitter and stuff like that, but we haven't been really promoting the channel hard. So that's only recently changed now that we've got a very solid kind of direction, and like, we've got a bank of things that we're going to be recording and whatnot. So now's a good time to kind of jump on board. So that's it, really. Just jump on, and if you want to chat to any of us, find us on Twitter and Reddit and Instagram and Facebook and all of the things that take up time that I should be spending with editing instead.
Perfect. And as a reminder, everyone, Matt's link to his channel, it's going to be the first link down in the description. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and may the force be with you.
Bye.